courage,
The hardest thing that I ever done in my life.
patriotism,
We have a lot of blessings that other countries don't always get.
sacrifice,
You got to put your head someplace else and just go ahead and do what your job is.
these traits are shared by the brave men and women who protect the United States of America. Welcome to Service Salute, a half-hour special to recognize the veterans of the United States Armed Forces for their service. Sponsored by Baird Auto Group and Verizon.
Hello and welcome to Service Salute. I'm Kirsten Ditto. KIT is dedicated to honoring our veterans and the sacrifices both they and their families make for our country. Over the next 30 minutes, we will share the stories of 5 local individuals, each with their own unique military experiences. First, we meet a man who grew up in Dixie and served for more than 20 years in the U.S. Air Forces. When Ted Mabry retired, he had the highest rank in the Air Force, Chief Master Sergeant. He shared his stories of both enlisting, going to boot camp and specialty schools, and both his wins and losses in Thailand.
My name is Ted Mabry. I'm a retired Chief Master Sergeant from the USAF. I enlisted on the 6th day of June 1955. I graduated in May of '55 from Dixie, over by Lake City in that area. But when I got out of boot camp, they gave me my school of choice, told them I wanted to go to EOD school, and nobody knew what that was, except me. And it was a school for bomb squad people. It was 26 weeks of the hardest thing that I ever done in my life. When I left EOD school, I was the number 2 man on a 2-man team in Little Rock. Got an assignment from Little Rock. It was a special missions assignment, and I didn't know it. I went to Bermuda. When I got there, they had no EOD people or bomb squads. I was by myself. This gentleman come in a black suit. I didn't know who he was. And he introduced himself he was from Secret Service. And he said, "You're here for a project." I was sampling nuclear weapons from Russia. I did not know that until I got back to Texas. I know it for a fact. I had orders to go to the Philippines, another special assignment. And they gave me 13th Air Force Headquarters and 26 bomb squads as a young Master Sergeant. And I made Senior Master Sergeant after I had turned down another commission. They wanted us in an operation that they called Pepper Grinder. They would go in wherever they had bombs to fail or anti-personnel devices, whatever, and I'd spend at least 1 3-day tour about every 4 weeks. I had a small team, Laotian team, that worked with me, would work with me during the day and shoot at me at night. It was hard to tell who the enemy was. I lost a guy. I had the first casualty of bomb squad, and he volunteered on the 7th of April. 1972. I was told to get back to Udorn and wait in the CIA area for a plane. And it had Dick Milton on it, at his body. Dick had got hit right through the heart with a small item of some kind. I had to write the kill letters. I'd done all the forms. Jimmy Farmer got killed almost a month after I had left. Same outfit, almost the same thing. He got killed turning a 101, 105 round over. It had a grenade under it. It blew and killed him. You can get all the ribbons and the congratulations in the world, but you can't forget those guys. The ones that don't make it. All these medals don't mean near as much to me as when somebody says, thank you. They're not talking to me. They're talking to a lot of people. And I'm honored to carry that.
Many of our veterans have told us that leaving their loved ones behind is the hardest part of deployment. This year for Service Salute, we spoke to the wife of a late World War II Navy pilot. Catherine Ponder was in Hawaii on December 7, 1941, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, but her husband was out to sea. She tells us about the times that she didn't know whether Willis Ponder was dead or alive.
He was Willis Miles Ponder Jr. There are a lot of them now. He had always wanted to fly, be a flyer. So he joined the Navy and then got accepted for the flying. He had the right education and all the other health things that were involved with getting into being a flyer. His first assignment then was, he was a pilot on a cruiser ship, the Pensacola. He flew a scout observation plane. Well, the attack was in December, and I went out there in May, I believe. We got an apartment to live in. When they left a week before, he said, "We are going to be at war." And he said, "You go back home as soon as you can if this starts." And it was a week later. Pearl Harbor happened. It was fairly early on a Sunday morning, and I had our son, who was 2 months old at that time, and they were always having practice, and they would always have the hours that we would hear the sound of these explosions from the practice that the soldiers were doing. And this was kind of early in the morning on a Sunday, and to hear those explosions, well, at first that's what I thought the sound was. But then I began to hear in the street the running feet of soldiers going to their post. 3/4 of the people that were service people, 3/4 of them were off duty. And many of our soldiers, I know, that morning were killed going from where they were spending the night to their post of duty. They were just, those planes were flying down and just strafing everything. And that's something you don't hear a lot about, just individuals, just sniper type killings. It was a while before I knew what was going on. And in the meantime, there was a constant roar of explosions. All alone, had no idea. The only thing I knew where I thought he would be about to the Philippines. And of course, if you remember the news of the day, that time, the Philippines fell in a very short time to the Japanese. And I just thought, well, he's a prisoner of war, because they were supposed to be in the Philippines that weekend. And for some reason, they averted going to the Philippines and headed toward Australia. So I didn't know that for several weeks, that he was okay. But finally I got a letter but that was a very welcome letter. But he was terribly upset when he first came into Pearl, because he said our Navy is all sunk nearly. It was a lot worse than civilians knew. I didn't realize myself what a picture it was to leave there, to leave Pearl Harbor and look all around me and see all the damage. From the ship Pensacola, they sent him back to Pensacola, Florida to be a flight instructor to train flyers. He was flying then every day, teaching pilots for 2 years. He liked teaching, yeah. Lieutenant commander. He had gotten several promotions. He's been gone 6 years, I think, now. He was 98 when he died. Had a good life here on the farm. We bought this farm right after the war and lived here ever since.
Cardoi is an online-only platform. Our mission is to deliver a vehicle, a quality car, at a reasonable price.
And when you buy from a trusted source, you know the peace of mind that you get knowing that you're buying a quality product, probably one of the best experiences you can get to purchase a vehicle. We're going to bring that to every single customer right to their doorstep.
We're looking forward to earning people's business, give you that white glove experience and have it delivered to your front door, because we treat every customer like a VIP.
Next up is a highly decorated veteran from the U.S. Army Reserves who received many awards and commendations. Major James Edward Largent is a 2019 inductee into the Arkansas Military Veterans Hall of Fame and now voluntarily performs funerals for eligible veterans.
My name's Major Jim Largent, retired from the United States Army. I retired in 1993. I'm an engineer officer, and I went in 1969. I went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for the basic training, and later on I went to Officer Candidate School at Fort Benning, Georgia, and that's when I was the infantry. And I didn't take my commission at first. I had a 2-year waiver that I could do. So I was on recruiting duty. I got fast-track promotion because nobody wanted to be on recruiting duty back then. But I was an area commander when I got promoted to second lieutenant, and I covered half the state of Missouri. After that, that's when I went to USAREC headquarters, which is United States Army Recruiting Command. And that's when I got on the team to go to select recruiters. I had 2 enlisted guys with me, and we just traveled all over the United States, Puerto Rico, Hawaii. I've been to every installation in every city, big city in the United States. We have what you got to have people in the States to take care of the troops on the ground and wherever they go, whether Vietnam or Kuwait, Iraq, Afghanistan, because they need resupplied, not only with troops, but there's another area of mobilization takes care of transportation. So it's a big thing. I mean, it's huge. General Schwarzkopf was the CENTCOM commander, and he kind of pushed what he needed in the fields when they were wherever they was at. So it was I met a lot of 4-star generals and worked with them. And General Colin Powell is one of the nicest men I ever talked to in my life. Yeah, when I got on the funeral detail, which to me the highest award you could never receive is when you pass away and you get the military flag. That is the highest honor as far as I'm concerned. Sometimes it's hard to do because you're standing there looking at the casket. Sometimes it's open, sometimes it's closed. And then you got the family members sitting there that's A lot of them are very upset. They're not angry, they're just upset. And sometimes it's hard to present a flag, and that was my responsibility, did the flag presentation. But so I've even done some family members. But you got to put your head someplace else and just go ahead and do what your job is. I enjoy it, and I mean, I say I enjoy doing it. I don't, it's hard on their families, and that part of it's not enjoyment, but it's an honor to do to the military funerals. And we don't take shortcuts. We don't do, I mean, if we needed, we stood at attention for an hour and a half one day, waiting for our turn to do our presentation. And your attention the whole time. It's hard, but it's an honor at the same time. I want to thank every veteran who's ever served in whatever branch of the service. It was a thing that you took out of your life to serve our country. And the other thing is for the spouses. My wife, Vicki, she, of course, when I was in the military, we weren't married, but it's hard on her to understand sometimes the military life and the camaraderie that you still have with, people you serve with. And so she takes it and tells me, I'm happy that you're doing them. But it's hard on her, it's hard on any spouse that their husband still participating in the military somewhere or another. It's a good life, it really is. Yeah, I've been blessed all my life, I really have.
All branches of the military have unique jobs that servicemen can train to do, but you will be hard-pressed to find a job more unique than the one our next veteran had. Cody McPherson joined the Air Force and became a senior airman, but he spent his days as a dog handler, forming a special bond with his dog, Ivar.
So I'm Cody McPherson. I was a senior airman in the Air Force. My plan was always like to open up a gym or, something in the exercise science world, so that's what I was going to school for. But then plans changed, and I was just like, I didn't want to keep going to school and just being up front with money, One day I woke up and I was like, you know what, I want to serve my country. I went to the recruiter's office here in Jonesboro and enlisted into the Air Force. My dad has a lot to do with it too. So he was MP, military police in the Air Force. And that's actually what I enlisted as. And I always wanted to be wanted to do something really unique and cool in the military. And to be honest with you, is being a dog handler. And I pursued my dream of doing that. And the Air Force actually holds all that training in San Antonio, Texas. So I did that, and with being a cop in the Air Force, your tech training is also in San Antonio. So I didn't travel or anything at that time. I just stayed in San Antonio for basic training and then my tech school, and did that for, I think it was probably altogether about 3.5 months. Before doing K9, I was actually stationed at the 820th, which we were considered safe side, but all our mission was deploy. So that's all we would do. We would train to deploy. We were on kind of like a year rotation. So we're in States for 6 months, we train for 6 months, and then we deploy for 6 to 9 months. So I did deploy twice before I started working with my K9. Jordan was my first tour, and then an undisclosed location in Africa, my second tour. In 2015 was whenever I went to Jordan. And then in Africa, I went in 2018, I think it was. So not too much going on, but it's more of just getting those bases, building them from the ground up. So they weren't fully built yet, and it was just us being there as, military police, just protecting that base and making sure that nothing happens. I was actually blessed to have just one K9. My 3.5 years as being a dog handler. These dogs are actually dogs that didn't fully pass their qualifications to be put with, a handler. So we're all learning each other. So you're getting thrown with a dog for let's just do patrol work. One of the hardest things was just trying to build a connection with your K9 in a short amount of time. Usually, you know, after that first year, a lot of our trainers, canine trainers, they want you to kind of, you know, be diverse and work with other dogs. But I had my canine was pretty crazy. He was very particular on who he wanted as their, you know, as their handler, and a lot of other handlers were very scared and timid from this canine. His name was Ivar, and I loved him, and I was like, we just had built that connection from day one, and from there I worked with him all the way through my time until I got out of the service. You know, unfortunately, he actually passed away not too long ago, and so that was very, very hard, especially knowing that after that, all that time that you've built, you know, you've trained with him, you've worked with, you know, patrol work, bomb training, we do all that together, so you build that bond and that trust, and he ends up becoming like, you know, y'all become best friends. And so those words of saying bye, you know, it's kind of, I never wanted to say that. It was more of like, I'll see you again soon type deal. In the military, you're away a lot, and it is kind of hard. It is to be away from family, your friends. You know, I had to leave a lot of stuff behind. I was recently engaged to my wife, and that was just a struggle trying to be away from her and the family. But, you know, she supported me so much. So then we were able to get through that. But at the end of the day, you know, I signed those papers to serve my country. So that was just one thing that helped me push through to keep wanting to stay positive and determined to kind of reach my goal to be that dog handler that I wanted to be. Being in the military, it's one of the best decisions that I ever made. And if anybody is ever on the fence about joining and you have that gut feeling, I would recommend, you know, just pursue it. Just take it, see where it takes you. You know, you're only signing a contract for 4 or 6 years. And there's so much more time that you can do after the military. But the military, you know, it changed my life, but for the better. And I wouldn't change anything about that. So I would just recommend those that were kind of like myself in college that really didn't know 110% of what they wanted to do. Just pursue it. You know, it's a great career field to get into.
At Baird RV and Outdoor, we are family, and we take pride in helping your family purchase your home away from home. We'll find an RV to fit anyone's budget and lifestyle. We're a phone call away, and we want to make sure your experience is the best it can be. Visit us today in Paragould or Mountain Home, or online at BairdRV.com.
Baird does it all for you.
Women make up just 6.5% of the U.S. Marine Corps, but our next veteran is just that. Brittany Woods enlisted in the Marines to challenge herself. She rose to that challenge, and she found bright spots in what many hold as the toughest branch of the military.
My name is Brittany Woods, and I'm a Marine Corps combat vet. My rank when I got out was sergeant. I enlisted, I went off into basic training back in January of 2011. And I did 4 years active, 4 years inactive. So I love the idea of doing something that was unexpected. I mean, I was a cheerleader in high school and I played trumpet and band. It wasn't something that you would normally see me doing. So I love the fact that if people believed I couldn't do it, I could. After training, you go to MCT, which is another type of training, and that was in North Carolina. And that's where I also did my MOS school. So my job school was in basically Jacksonville area of North Carolina. And then after that, I was stationed in Okinawa, Japan. Beautiful place, loved it, never regret it. And then from Japan, I went to Afghanistan. And I did my deployment from 2012 to 2013. And then I went back to Okinawa. And then from Okinawa, I went to San Diego. I think one of the coolest parts of being that I can remember about Okinawa was actually a morning run. Sometimes we didn't run on base, sometimes we ran outside of base. One of our leaders took us on a run and we got to go to Hacksaw Ridge, that very famous spot, and learn the history of the island and what took place there. So that was very special. My MOS training was technically for supply administration, but I definitely did a lot of jobs that weren't my job while I was in. I definitely wasn't built for a desk job, so I loved anything that could take me away from that. So I I did some brig chasing for a while, so you do escort prisoners anywhere they need to go, whether they have doctor's appointments, court appointments, anything like that. And then I did public relations, so I got to take pictures and write news articles while I was in Afghanistan. And then I had a big passion for swimming. I really wanted to be a swim instructor. Didn't get to go that far, but I loved the swimming part of it. So anything that I could do to just expand my knowledge and expand my abilities, I wanted to go do it. Surprisingly, I think my best time in the Marine Corps was in Afghanistan. I think it's because that's what I signed up for. And I actually volunteered to go to Afghanistan. It wasn't like I was, forced to go. They asked who wanted to go, and we raised our hands to go because that's what we want out of our military careers. We want a chance to be a part of something, I think, bigger, than ourselves and have that purpose behind it. While I was there, our job was, I was part of the, I think it was the R4OG, which is basically, our job was to break it down and bring it back. So it was about cleaning off materials and sending them back to the United States because it was towards the end of the time there. There were still some moments that it, we had some situations on base, but I think when you're in that moment, it's not as scary as you might believe. I think it's just because you kind of just accept it. But honestly, if I could have probably done my whole military career in Afghan, I probably would have, just because I surprisingly enjoyed every minute of it. I remember during my MCT training, one of the things that we had to do is we had to dig a pretty deep hole. It's kind of like a fighting hole. Me and my buddy had to dig it in like this red clay, and I remember we were laying down in it, and her feet were in my face and my feet were in her face because we didn't have time to make it big enough. And I remember just laughing, and she's like, "What is so funny?" And I just thought, look at what we're doing. I'm like, our friends are back at home in college, probably partying, and we're sleeping in the hole in the middle of the woods. It's those random, in a way, kind of miserable moments, but it's like those are like the best parts of it. Even if they didn't serve in the Marine Corps, I think that being a female, you just have a different experience, just because there's an unspoken bond. Even if you're not in the Marine Corps, if you were part of the Air Force or the Navy, there's just that unspoken bond as a female, that you have that connection, that you know that you had to go through something tough and that it wasn't always easy, especially because of the fact that you're a female, that there's going to be a lot of things stacked up against you. But having that chance to talk to them on the outside is very special, and you just kind of feel that little bit of that tie right there. I mean, like, you don't have to know anything about them except for just the fact that they served, and you know that there's something that can connect you on a different level.
Thank you for joining us for this year's Service Salute. KIT wants to take this time to thank not only the veterans we spoke with, but all men and women who serve our country and protect our freedoms.
Thank you for joining us in recognizing the courage and sacrifice of these brave veterans, and to all the men and women who have served in the United States Armed Forces. Thank you. Sponsored by Baird Auto Group and Verizon.